Now, everybody that knows me or has been to the shop or just has heard the rumors of my demise, they know I like things clean. When you're working on an old motorcycle, there's a lot of legitimate reasons to keep things clean. Some that are obvious, some that are not that obvious. Now, on our most recent project, the Evil Twins, the two Suzukis, there's a lot of stuff that has to get cleaned up. And every motorcycle, no matter what, how old it is, how new it is, it'll have things that if you take it apart, you should clean them up before you put it back together. And one of the most obvious things, you take anything apart, there's always bolts that always seem to be rusted or corroded. It's always a good idea, in my opinion, to clean them up. And so today we have a good set of parts that need to be cleaned, and starting with the bolts and the fasteners from the Evil Twin project that hold the exhaust system on. Oh, I'll be honest, I have a very highly computerized inventory system of keeping track of my bolts. But I never put a bolt back in where it's going to be meeting its threads dirty. So to start with something that really is inconsequential to a lot of people, not inconsequential to me, of course. I like working with clean materials, clean bolts, clean parts. Now we've been on a relatively new motorcycle. This is an 09. Cleaning up the bolts, and this little video is going to be about cleaning up the bolts basically. It just makes it so much easier to work on a motorcycle, so much more pleasant. It also serves another purpose to me. Now, just recently I steam cleaned this engine, went for a couple of rides, and by constantly cleaning it and checking it and looking around for problems, I always notice loose bolts and I always notice little baby oil leaks. And when I took this bike apart, I noticed right away the front motor mount doesn't have a Suzuki bolt in it. It's got a piece of threaded rod that's probably a grade 5 threaded rod, not a grade 8. That could ruin your whole day. And also, all of the bolts that I've ever worked on this bike, this is the donor bike, I've never seen two bolts the same tightness. Some are tight, some are loose, some fall out, some you don't even need a wrench. Well, that's another reason and I'll explain that in detail. So these are all the little parts that came off the exhaust system. We took the exhaust system off, and I wanted to this is just something, if you look at the video of taking the exhaust off, try to keep these videos a reasonable length. These bolts are really corroded. Some were in so tight you couldn't imagine, and some, I'll bet they were hand tight and not a whole lot more. Some had lock washers, some had no lock washers. That's just poor mechanical, I don't know, skills or whatever. These things are corroded. Before I put them back in, of course, they will be as fresh and clean as I can make them. And no matter what job I'm working on, two things I try to do. Keep it clean, and always, because it's the easiest thing in the world to just run the bolts on a wire wheel. It takes so little time, and the payback is gigantic. Number one, they look nicer, but here's a good example of something that if these bolts, if they're in too tight or not tight enough, it can be a real problem. When you have dirty bolts like this, here's what happens. The corrosion and rust on the threaded part, it gives you an uneven torque setting. So you're tightening this, but you're not tightening it because the grit that's in these threads is just making, just like going down a driveway with your foot hanging out the door of the car. So the little effort it's going to take to clean these up, number one, it should give me a more reliable torque setting, whether you do it by hand or with a torque wrench. It's so simple, it slips by a lot of people. And these bolts, one of the things is they do a mechanical job. They are really doing a lot of mechanical, physical work. So the fact that they're going into the engine, once you strip this, if you over tighten it or under tighten it and it gets loose, you get a vibration issue. If you get the wrong torque setting on any of these header bolts, especially on a GS, that exhaust system can just start doing the shimmy shake on you. So what I wanted to do is just show, starting with one of our corroded bolts. how quick it is to clean up a bolt. Okay, now no camera cuts, no tomfoolery with this. Now, what a difference. A minute a bolt, and instead of having, and the threads are wire brushed clean, I'm not going to get any of those uneven torque settings. And the appearance, I could even polish this up more if I wanted to, but it's a win-win situation. So I tried to show that in real time, how much time I spend, about a minute, minute and a half on each bolt. Boy, is it a lot more fun working with these parts than with these. Night and day difference. And the bike actually looks better, and my torque settings are better. These are the same, and if you're working on a GS, you know there's two different sizes to these. You can't switch them around. So there's long ones and short ones, so it's a good idea. When they're nice and clean, it's a lot easier to keep track of them. And it's just about the same time as doing a bolt. It'll definitely be a lot more fun putting a motorcycle back together with these parts. That's for sure. And you look at these parts and just say, well, what would be more fun if we were we're gonna replace the exhaust system? Which would be more fun to work with? And what always gets me about cleaning up the parts, it only takes a few minutes. And to put it all back together and do all that work and have this as the bottom line, I don't know. Anyway, I know how I like to work. So today we're going to dig in, and it'll probably be an hour, hour and a half or so, and I'll have all of these parts cleaned up and on the clean table. Okay, that's one part of the job, one part of today's mission accomplished on those. Now, it's really a loaded question, but that to me is time well spent. And you do, the problem with all of this, not a problem, but you do get to see the front of the bolts, the capped end. But just knowing that it's nice and clean, just working on a project just gets to be a little bit nicer. By the way, another great tip, a really great tip, and I've heard this from several people, including Luciano, never throw the old bolts away. You replace a part of your motorcycle and there's bolts on it, save the bolts. I have tray after tray of bolts that I've taken out of different things, because every once in a while you need one of those bolts, and usually the bolts that are on a motorcycle are grade 8, or at least they're good quality bolts. Now, I have brand new CAD plated washers that I got from AutoZone, metric, and so there's no point even spending time cleaning these up. Now the CAD plated, and again you can get this from AutoZone, they have these CAD plated bolts. They come grade 5, grade 8. Now these are the mounting bolts that you mount the back of the muffler to. So, but these, I'd rather have brand new ones that have the plating on them. Now, as long as I got a little time here at the end of the session, this is one of the next projects we're going to be working on Evil Twin. I may as well get all the bolts prepped up for that too. Well, this was a nice productive session. We got some of our hardware ready for some of the upcoming parts of the Evil Twin project. Every time I get something prepped up, I always feel good about it too. And one of the next big jobs we have is to get some of the rust off of the pipes. That'll be for another day. Anyway, hope you enjoyed the video. Give you some thoughts about what you can do to get your bolts upgraded. By the way, a great source of bolts, grade 8, grade 5, stainless, whatever, is boltdepot.com. I've bought a lot of stuff from them. Very good service, very high quality. So I hope you enjoyed the video, and thanks for watching.